Buongiorno, buon pomeriggio, e buonasera, Lazio world. Welcome to our instant reaction pod. Consider this a little extra stoppage time as we review Lazio versus Milan. I'm your host, Shawn McIntosh, and I was just handed a red card on my way to set up this podcast. So what a clown show that was. I am honored to be joined by guest Marc from Lazio Club Toronto. Marc, welcome to the podcast. How are you feeling?
Yeah, that's that was quite difficult to watch, especially the last 20 minutes. So I don't know, mixture of feelings, I guess. A little
Well,
bit of rage.
yeah, I mean, a lot happened. Let's jump into our recap and then let's let these feelings out because, like many Laziali, I'm sure there are a ton of mixed feelings on this one. So, first off, taking a look at our starting 11, couple notes. Clearly, Mr. Sarri with an eye to Tuesday's fixture against Bayern Munich in that second leg, with Tati inserted as our number 9 ahead of Ciro Immobile. Nice to see Zaccagni back to full fitness and regaining his spot on that left side. Vecino taking the role of Regista over Cataldi. Rovella still injured. Back to our pairing of Romagnoli and Gila. And then finally, what we, at least in this podcast, have been clamoring for, and obviously a lot to talk about, but Pellegrini getting the much desired start, which leads to probably a lot that we'll spend a time on here today. But felt meh about that starting 11. But we start off the match and we start off very composed. We start off the aggressor. We start off pressing and looking like a Lazio that one was in control, but certainly a lot more focused than we had seen in the match prior. Start off with some nice pressure from Tati to cause a turnover, a little bit of chaos from Milan in a few situations where, in the 12th minute, there's a penalty check. Tati taken out by Magnan, who gets the ball first, but it all kind of starts from just an errant pass from Florenzi, who had a pretty poor performance by his standards. And Lazio, again, seemingly in control. Not a lot from Milan in this one. The first real opportunity for Milan doesn't come until the 46th minute in first half stoppage time, with Pulisic striking a really nice ball. Provedel coming up with a big save. But other than that, we go into halftime with probably a fair 0-0 result. Lazio coming out 50th minute, a first real crack of the second half. Ball in the box. Felipe can't really get a good shot off. Ultimately leads to a counter. Pellegrini has to take out Pulisic, sees a yellow card, which would have led to him missing the next match. Regardless of what ends up happening, I thought it was a fine foul by Pellegrini, just to avoid any sort of unnecessary danger.
Professional foul for sure.
Yeah, it was professional foul, but the then 57th minute, Pellegrini sees red in just a moment of madness, and we'll spend some time talking about who deserves maybe the most blame. There's a lot of blame to go around in that particular instance, but Pellegrini, anticipating that the ref would blow the whistle for a head injury with Tati on the ground, ultimately takes down Pulisic and sees red. So from that point forward, Lazio down a man. We immediately see subs from Sarri, Hisai in for Luis Alberto, Ciro in for Tati. A couple minutes after that, we see Isaacson inserted for Zaccagni. Purely probably a moment. First subs, tactical, the substitution of Isaacson for Zaccagni, truly saving some legs for Zaccagni for this critical match that we have on Tuesday. Provedel comes up big in the 75th minute. Big save on Ruben Loftus-Cheek. Ciro Immobile in the 75th minute misses Lazio's best opportunity of the match when Isaacson plays him a pass in the box and just inches wide. Moments later, Leao scores an unfortunate goal. Should it, had it stood, it would have been really an unfair goal that ultimately deflects off of a Lazio player, but it is ruled offside for those images and folks that saw that really by the slimmest of margins. We see Cataldi come on for Vecino. And then 87th minute, Milan strikes after a couple saves from Provedel, ultimately a failure to clear the ball out, sees Okafor finish his own chance. And then Ciro Immobile with the last opportunity in the 92nd minute, takes a crack at it, shot goes wide, just has to do better. And then the match finishes off in the 95th and 96th minute with two consecutive red cards. Marusic for God knows what, and then Guendouzi after being pulled, having his limbs ripped off for 10 yards from Pulisic, pushes Pulisic in what would in any normal scenario had seen himself with a yellow, is given a straight red card, which ultimately saw Lazio down to 8 men before the final whistle blows for a 1-0 loss for Lazio. Taking a look at the table now, Lazio obviously no favors to themselves, sit on 40 points, ninth in the table, with every other team still yet to play this week's fixtures. Brief look at the statistics here, because we did see a Lazio that came out looking a little bit more composed until all of those moments of madness. But ball possession, clear for Milan, 62% to Lazio's 38%. But Milan failing to really do anything with that possession. Expected goals, Lazio at 1.48 to Milan's 1. Total shots, 14 to Milan, 11 to Lazio. And Lazio with 2 big chances in the match, missing both of those. Milan with only 1 big chance. And ultimately, it sees us in a place where we're not very happy. But I say all that to ask, Mark, what are your 3 words to describe this match?
Definitely frustration. 100%. That's number 1. Might be number 2 as well, actually, but frustration, and then hope and despair, because, like you said, the first bit of that game, the first half of the game, and for the first period of the second half, I thought we were pretty good. Milan came out in the second half, as you might expect, and sort of tried to sort of regain control of the game. But I thought we were doing quite well. We had some really sort of bright moments, and we were handling it well. We were playing at a level that was, a little bit more what we might expect given the last few games. And then Pellegrini, right? Happens, and again, we can get into that episode a little bit more in detail later, but I just felt like everything was going fairly well at that point. I thought, okay, this is a game where now we're going to maybe see some changes, some tactical changes, and then maybe we'll see an opening somewhere, and Lazio can get a goal. Unfortunately, the Pellegrini red card just sort of just killed any chance that we had, of potentially being able to win that game, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The Lazio sees red really boils down to what changed this match. We always like to talk about what series of events or what moment, whether tactical, whether it was a player losing their minds, as they so often do in a Lazio match. The key and the moment that you can directly point to that ultimately changed everything in this is clear as day, and that is the red card. Now, I'd love to just get your thoughts on it. I was having a debate with Caleb, our guest here, and a couple folks here that are Laziali in Charlotte, which is always great to see. And just trying to assign maybe, again, there's a lot of people to blame for that moment. But I want to ask you, Mark, who is most to blame for that incident with Pellegrini? Is it Pellegrini, who should have maybe played through the whistle? Is it the ref who, seemed we can say he should have blown a whistle, a head injury. The rules state that immediate whistle, stoppage of play, Tati is on the ground. There seemed to have been, you could call it, I don't want to use deception because that would indicate, right, that there's some sort of intent. I can't read the referee's mind here, but it seemed that Pellegrini understood or received some sort of indication from the ref that he would stop the play, right? There was some sort of eye contact and Pellegrini stopped. So is the ref to blame? And then probably less to blame. And maybe this is just being really emotional. And he's actually a player I quite admire. My favorite American player in Christian Pulisic. But I thought it was, I know I'll probably get a lot of hate for this. I thought it was a little classless. And again, maybe it's emotion speaking and just being angry. But I thought in that moment it was clear what Pellegrini was trying to do. So who are you assigning the most blame for in that moment?
Well, at the time I was, you're kind of angry at everybody, and I think I do think that ultimately probably Pellegrini's the most at fault, because why take that chance? Why even bother having a conversation with Pulisic on this? Like, what are you guys talking about? Now, if there was a sign that the ref made to him that I didn't notice, I don't know, we couldn't hear what was happening on the field, that's a different story. If Di Bello made some kind of indication or said something that he was going to stop the play and didn't, well, that's a whole other story that needs to be investigated. Like, at that point, I think the AYA needs to get involved, because if that's indeed what happened, that's a big problem, because you as the ref need to make clear indications to the players so that they understand what's going to happen. I mean, Pulisic, yeah, it's a bit of a dick move, if that's what happened. But he's being football, right? Like, he's clearly learned from being in the city.
He's been in Serie A long enough now, right?
Yeah, yeah. So he's learning, right? He's learned that sometimes you play those little games, and it could have been hard to say. I don't know what he might have said or what Pellegrini might have said to him, but it did look like he was definitely a little sly on that one. So that's a bit of a move where you might say to yourself, well, in the old days, players had more respect, blah blah blah. But I don't know. But Pellegrini has to be smarter than that. Like, he has to be more football. He has to be a little bit more, canny. You can't grab the guy by the throat and throw him on the floor. Much as you might want to, and I would have liked to do that. But you got to be smarter than that. But I do think also, just based, again, if it's just that play, then fine, perhaps Di Bello gets off. But to me, like, the whole game, he indicated a line of behavior, a line of sort of that he was taking in terms of the cards and when he was giving them and all that. Honestly, that was awful. Like, that was awful. Even on that play, like, I get it, he grabbed them, but maybe given the circumstances, why don't you go find out what happened? Take a sec. He pulled out that red card so fast, it was like it was burning a hole in his pocket. Like, he had to get it out. And it was like, come on. Like, you're not even going to go, maybe, someone got hurt. If there was an indication, it looked like Pellegrini was trying to play the ball out and saying to Pulisic, I'm going to play it out. Fine, you can't put your hands up, but at that point, maybe, use a little bit of finesse as a ref and go find out what happened. Maybe take that extra minute to figure it out. He pulled it out so quick. I'm not sure how you could make the decision that quickly based on that situation, which was a bit frantic and frenetic. And it was kind of like, what just happened there? Right? Like, I mean, even at home, it was like red card came out and it was like, well, what just happened there? Why? And then you have to see the replay to say, oh, okay, I see.
Yeah. Well, that same situation again. These moments sometimes happen. Things get out of hand. Referees make mistakes. But we saw this that night. We saw this aside from the red cards. But then just you look at each of those red card scenarios, and they were very problematic. And I hate assigning blame to refs when it comes to our failure to pick up points. But this one, was clear. And you look at each one of those incidents, and we talk about not knowing what the hell happened until you see a replay. It's still in question, like, what happened with Marusic? Where did that red card come from? The Guendouzi red card, it's again a failure of the referee. Besides the fact it should never be a red. The referee allowed that situation to progress because
100%.
he's getting yanked for God, it felt like 10 minutes, right? Like it's enough. The ref has to blow the whistle to protect the player, right? The job of the referee above all is to protect the players. And he's not doing that in that situation. And it allows to progress to a point where, Guendouzi pushes and it's a yellow. That's it.
Fine.
I mean, so out of hand and immediate, no thought to it. It's a red right away. Doesn't assess the situation. And obviously at that point in the match, I mean, despite being down 1, we were still in it. We're down a goal. Lazio, for how often we can feel downtrodden by their lack of attack, they still were pushing forward, even down 3 men. It was like, okay.
It was night and day. Night and day from like the Fiorentina match on the other week, which was just abysmal. That was just a disaster from beginning to end. You're right. Like this one here, we clearly wanted to get something out of that game, and we weren't going to give up. And they kept running. And even that play with Guendouzi, like look what he does. He takes the ball and he runs across the field, and he is like running at full tilt to try to get into a space where he can find some support, right? And like you said, Pulisic is pulling him the whole way. And you're right. I mean, DeBello has to the whole point of making that call early as a ref is knowing how to manage the emotions of a game. And after everything that happened there, he allows Pulisic to basically like ride him like a pony for about 15, 20 yards. And it's like, then he gets upset and he gives him a bit of a shove. Even that, like the shove wasn't like he walked away, then walked back and shoved him. It was all kind of part of the end of the play.
It was all in the momentum of
100%
he's charging forward. Pulisic is in front of him. So, well, look, let's now shift our focus because I don't want to spend 20 minutes on the disaster class of a referee performance, and let's maybe fixate right now. We'll spend a little time on maybe some of the positive. Who was your man of the match on the Lazio end?
Guendouzi, I would say, in spite of the red card, which I don't think was his fault. We just said, I really do think Guendouzi had a wonderful match. He was all over the place. He was recovering balls. He was disrupting. He even sort of provided a great deal of support in the build-up and in the in trying to create some chances. I thought he did really well.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me it was between 2 players, Guendouzi, and then the other I want to shout out is Zaccagni, because what we have seen, particularly this season, and the failure of our wingers to really just be direct and put a defense on their heels. Zaccagni back in that starting spot. That's what you saw. That's what he brings. His ability to one turn, and I mean, putting Florenzi on his ass time and time again. And just again, even when he loses the ball, he is sending a signal that he is going to continue to attack. He's got the green light from Sarri to keep doing that, and it just opens things up. So it was nice to have him back.
And even his movement
to the attack.
Yeah, and even his movement, like I mean, that is exactly what and that's exactly what Zaccagni brings to the table. Yep. And that is also why he is like one of the. I know last year he was one of the most fouled players in the league. It might have been D. I'm not 100% sure.
He's still one of the top 5. Prior to his injury, I think he was leading all of Europe's top 5 leagues and fouls received. And that's his game. That's what he does. And that is one of the most critical elements that we've been missing in our attack. Cheeto is not finding himself with a lot around him and opportunities, and even for the fault of Tati, like there's not a ton of service in opportunities and space that they can do a ton with. Now we'll talk about Cheeto in this match, but yeah, that's what Zaccagni brings, and I'll even add, those were my absolute standouts. I've been pretty critical of Luis Alberto this season because he is just not the Luis Alberto that we've seen. But I will say he was pretty good today. I thought, and maybe now I'm switching. Maybe now I expect less of him. But I thought he was solid today.
I think with Luis Alberto, I think, I always say the same thing about him. The same thing I say about Felipe Anderson, in the sense that, look, man, if Luis Alberto could play consistently like the best Luis Alberto, like, we love
Yeah.
Lazio. He
Yeah, he'd be
wouldn't
at
be
Real
playing
Madrid.
for Lazio.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yep.
Like,
Absolutely.
that's what you get. You get Felipe Anderson, who is, like I said, sometimes incredible, like amongst the best in Europe, but you're also going to get times when he's like sad, and he's moping around the field. And Luis Alberto, you're going to get his mercurial side, where he's going to send out a tweet or say something on the new, to an interviewer that's going to be, a little bit, provocative. That's what you get. If they didn't do those things, those are the defects that you're going to get when you are Lazio, and you are looking for, unfortunately, that's the way it is. We're looking for bargain players that we can fit into our program and fit into our budget, right?
Yeah. The difference,
It is what it is.
I would say, at least with a Felipe Anderson, right? When Luis is not Luis Alberto, and he's not that creative outlet, he doesn't offer much else.
No.
With Felipe, and I know we can all get frustrated because we're so fixated on the attack, right? We want to see him be aggressive. We want to see him take people on one-on-one. And when he doesn't do that, we are all quick to assume what a terrible disaster of a match, because it's what he does on the defensive side. It's not sexy.
A lot.
That's not what we see.
No.
When Felipe is not his best in attack, he still offers a ton. That
100%.
Those of us that are looking at the full picture can see, okay, right, he's winning balls back. We also understand that he can't take on a player one-on-one 100 times a match, because he is putting in a shift. And so that I think is the biggest difference, and why, at least on this podcast, we've assigned more bidones to Luis Alberto than any other player this season, because when he is not providing service, and he is skying his free kicks, and providing some of the worst set pieces and corners that we've seen, then he's not offering anything else. And so
it's remarkable he's allowed to. That's the one thing I think you consistently hear, though. Even just like, if there's that, because Lazio are obviously, we're a contentious bunch. We can't even agree ourselves on most things. But the one thing that seems to galvanize everybody is that Luis Alberto should not be taking free kicks anymore. Right? Someone told me there's a petition online or something.
Yeah,
like that.
Well, there should be. He's got to be. And I'm the first one, I work in the industry. I work for a soccer club. I understand that sometimes not everything is evident out there in the open. Things happen behind closed doors. There's always a story. This man he's got to be the best at set pieces in the universe during practice, because there's honestly no other explanation. He's got to be just brilliant. And Sadi is holding on for something to happen in a match. But
or conversely, everybody else is just that bad. I don't know, but you're right.
That bad,
there's something going on.
I mean, look, we've seen Cataldi in the past bury some brilliant free kicks. Even Pellegrini this year, right? Like, they can't be that bad. I mean, somebody's got to be able to step up. Shifting to our bidone, who was your bidone of the match? Is it as obvious as Pellegrini?
No, because up until that part, he's not doing badly. I mean, maybe he gets it just for not being smart enough to control himself in that moment. But I'll be honest with you, like, I don't know, man. I feel like it would be really harsh. I would feel bad giving it to him, because up until that point, and I mean, I'm one of those people that always has said, like, how come he's not playing? Right? That is one of the things I do fault Sadi with,
we're on
is that I don't understand why he doesn't play him more.
So what do you think happens before then you give me your answer? Is this going to be the great shame of the season? We all want to see Pellegrini. It seems as if, there is a level of stubbornness with Sadi and over dependence on his Hisai and Marusic, and for whatever reason, Pellegrini just hasn't had his chance. When he has had his chances, he's performed pretty well. And here it is today, ahead of Champions League. Pellegrini gets his opportunity, red, so he's missing the next match regardless. But is that the last we see of him? Like, how confident are you that Sadi gives him an opportunity?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, It is true. Again, this is, it sort of relates to what you were talking about earlier. Is that so much of this sort of stuff is behind the scenes stuff that you don't know. Like, this is what I'm also always sort of saying, is that, like, it's easy to say, oh, that guy should play or this guy should play or what, but it's like, I'm not in a training session all week with these guys. And a lot happens if you've been on a team, if you're around the team, like, there's stuff that happens in training sessions that we are not privy to that affects the functioning of the team and the decisions that a coach is going to make. I mean, to a certain extent, part of me says start him against Bayern Munich. Like, he was off half the game anyway, and he had a good game, and why not? I doubt it, just because but I guess actually I should say I don't know. I doubt it only because I don't think Sadi's going to go for a forward traction team, and Pellegrini on the field sends a signal that we're going forward. And that's what I liked about seeing him in the lineup today as well. That I like the fact that that's putting Pellegrini on was sort of showing we're going forward in this game. We're not here to tie this game. We're here to try to win this game.
Well, I would love that, but you're right. He's not going to do it. But I think there's so much besides the tactical adjustment that we would like to see, right? I think the message that it sends, I would love to go into Bayern and say, look, we want to attack. We want to put them on their heels, put a little bit of pressure on Bayern, let them know.
Maybe score a goal.
Here to just sit back and take pressure, because
100%.
I would say the first 10, 15, 20 minutes, all the pressure is going to be on Lazio, right? Bayern's going to come out. We know Lazio struggles with adversity. So if we give up an early goal, forget about it. It's done. Right?
Yeah.
But if we can hold strong, put a little bit of pressure on Bayern, keep our composure, get through that first 20, 25 minutes, now all of a sudden that focus and that pressure is on Bayern. They start to get a little tense. They start to feel the moment. They start to chase goals. I would love to see a Pellegrini in there. The other thing I think that does for him is sends a message that there is confidence. Shake this off. We still believe in you. He is a young player. He's a Laziale. He's a player that we all want to see here at the club. Would love that message sent that just, shows him that it's not all gone because of one moment. But let's be honest, I'm not gonna bet on that happening. So,
no, I wouldn't. That's a sucker's
so without
bet,
Pellegrini, okay, because I think that's fair. I like the approach, right? It was an unfortunate moment. So then, over the course of the match, who was our poorest performer?
I mean, probably going back to probably Luis Alberto. He doesn't he didn't really have, I don't think, a huge impact on the match, even when we were sort of doing well. I mean, he did try to thread a few balls. Even then, it is. Honestly, I guess part of me says I almost feel bad giving it to anybody. Like against Fiorentina, we just 5 guys that should get that award. But in a game like this tonight, I just it's hard to say, because up until that point, that the red card, I thought we were doing well. We were pushing. We were active. We were attacking. We were like you said, we were pressing well. We were really. It was a bright game up until that point, and then everything went wrong after that. Right. So I don't know. I mean, I didn't see. I thought Gila played really well as well. Like he made a couple marauding runs, which you love to see. Your center backs start in a 4-3-3, start bombing forward a bit. It creates a total chaos for the other team to a certain extent, because they don't see it coming, and it's not. So I love that. I thought Romagnoli played a solid game. So
I'll give it to somebody. And this is probably going to be unfair, because he's a player that was subbed in, and I love him. He's my favorite Lazio player of all time. But I'm going to hand it to Ciro Immobile for this one, and simply because, again, this is an attack that is sputtered this season, and I know it's hard. It is hard on a striker. I say the same thing for Tati. It's a ton of pressure. You don't get a ton of opportunities. We've talked about Ciro Immobile. The brilliance of Ciro Immobile is that he creates opportunities for himself. That is what he is world class at. He is not a world class finisher, right? But he is world class at making runs, finding opportunities, and giving himself chances. Unfortunately, in this attack that we have this season, our strikers are not getting opportunities. The service isn't there. They're not clicking. And so now the pressure mounts. And this is what we see from Ciro and the Azzurri. It's like, well, you get one chance and you better bury it. But unfortunately, for a match like this, for our beloved Cheetah in a match where we need our superstar to come through in a big moment, and you're only going to get one moment, and we need Cheetah to be the one on the ball, right? Tati, there's unfortunately, and I still think there's a player in Tati. Unfortunately, the expectation from Lazio, he's going to miss it. But Cheetah, in those moments, right? Two moments. Yeah. That first one, he has just got to. Isaacson does well. He's got to finish that. Yeah. Even the second one, really poor in the 90-something minute where he has a crack at it. Just when things are when we are still in the game. And so, unfortunately, as cruel as it may be, I have to give Ciro Immobile the bidone, because he has one job, and you know, I love the fight, love the energy, but he's got to finish those. I just don't, you know, obviously there's a number of different factors here, but I think when you combine the fact that he's been, you know, his injury problems over the last 2 years, you combine the fact that he's getting older, right? And then you combine the fact that I don't think necessarily a 4-3-3 is the best option for him, right? And the same thing with Tati. I mean, you know, there was a bit of hope there. Like I think Tati works really hard, and maybe this is unfair, but I've said this before. You know, to a certain extent, he's a better looking Murici. I know that's not the nicest thing to say, but he is better. Yeah, I get it. He's more technically sound, 100%. He runs more. His technical ability is loads, you know, better. But again, a guy that I'm not sure a 4-3-3 is for him. Like, you know, so the problem is, what are you going to do? I mean, that's not, you know, we're not going to have two strikers. That's not the way Sadi plays. It's a 4-3-3 coach. You know that. I know people will say, "Oh, just change the formation," but that's just naive. That's not the way coaches are. Right. I mean, if you want a Minestrado, go get a Minestrado. But that's not what you got. I'll say this, right? At least because you're right. Look, the system that suits Cheeto the best is not a 4-3-3. But first season with Sadi, it's good. It was good. 26 goals, if memory serves, right? Strong, incredible season. Capo Cannoniere, I believe, right? He can do it. Obviously, he's an older Cheeto. Obviously, you know, that takes away from some of his strengths, which makes the 4-3-3 a little bit harder for him. I think it does. Tati can also play as a winger, so Tati does have that flexibility. I will say with Tati, and you said it yourself, like, it's harsh. Like, he is a better player than Murici. 100%. We know, right? We know players can struggle in their first season. Tati's not the only player struggling this year. You know, again, Cheeto in the attack is struggling. Lots of players are struggling. I can at least still see moments and things that he can do. Folks say, well, MLS, he's a trash player because MLS. Like, let's look, there are players that come in from MLS that become Alphonso Davies, like Almiron, like, there are great players. So just because he was in MLS, people want to immediately crap on him. He's also a player that, you know, scored goals in La Liga and was able to find the back of the net 4 times against Real Madrid. Like, you see the bicycle kick and some of the skills that he possesses. It's not coming together right now. I just find it ludicrous to immediately want to throw this player away. Like, we how often do we talk about Serie A? Like, players need a little bit of time. Give them, especially strikers. Especially strikers. So it's a very tactical Tati. Like, give him a chance, because the difference between him and Murici was, besides the system that just didn't make sense. Horrific tactical. There was nothing he could technically. He just was not good enough. Technically, we can see some of those things that Tati can do. I think there's probably some disconnect. There's certainly probably the lack of confidence right now, but I still think that there is a player in there. Now, we're also talking about the expectation of who's the next Cheeto. He's probably not the next Cheeto. Like, we're probably not going to find that player unless you get somebody that 100%. But that's what we go back to, and I always go back to, you know, to a certain extent. It's the same thing we sometimes said, you know, with Murici too. It's like, well, who brought him here? You know, why did you bring him here? Like, I agree with all of the things you're saying about Tati, and sometimes, you know, we all get frustrated and, you know, whatever. But you're right. He's technically, you know, a much better player than Murici. He's, you know, much more physically fit. His touch is way better. He runs. He finds spaces. He sacrifices himself to help out his teammates. So all that stuff is wonderful, right? His attitude is amazing. All of that. Not that Murici had a bad attitude, because that's not fair either. He was a class guy through and through, right? Just not made for this league and not made for this team.
But, we're going into Champions League. Again, why do you go get Tati Castellanos? With all respect to him, that is not the player we needed, right? It's again the Tati, I'm going to go to the supermarket with a list because you want to make an omelet, and I'm going to come home with 4 peppers and some potatoes because that's what was on sale. Like, come on, man, that is not the player we needed. And so, it's true, we get frustrated with him, but it's to a certain extent, you look at him like, why was that the player that we thought we needed? Because I don't think anybody thought we needed that player, frankly.
No, not necessarily, but we obviously knew that there was a desperation and we needed a striker. For many, many years, it was, who is our Vice Immobile? Now we are at a phase where we don't need a Vice Immobile. We need
Immobile. We need Immobile.
Yeah, it's right. Yeah. And so I think, when we've gotten into arguments online with folks that are placing all of the blame on Sadi, and I'm of the mindset there's a lot of blame to go around, and these things don't all fall on one person when there is a failure like this. And we know the expectations are much higher than ninth in the table, and we know that this squad isn't a complete squad. I believe that wholeheartedly. Anybody that thinks that this is a squad ready to compete for big things, I just think are fooling themselves. However, it is a squad that is better than ninth in the table. And so, I think when we look at, we did have 2 very strong transfer markets by our status, by our standards, 2 very strong transfer markets. However, those transfer markets came really late in this cycle that we are in. And now we are in a place where I love the core. I love our core. I love this core of young players that we have. It is an incredible foundation. We can have this disaster season, and I can still be hopeful for our future should we get to keep these players, because they're not, right, they're all on some goofy loans with obligations. But if we can keep the likes of Guendouzi, Rovella, even Pellegrini, right, there's some really exciting players. Isaacson, Zakani is still young enough. Now, what we're missing and what everybody fails to understand is we have that core. However, those impact players are no longer the Ciro Immobiles of prime, the Luis Alberto of primes, right? Milinkovic-Savic is not here. So had those guys been the 27, 28-year-olds plus this influx, now we're talking about a squad. However, just didn't line up. So now we need to, our approach on this transfer market going into the summer really needs to be about who are going to be our impact players moving forward, and we've got to offload a lot of players.
Yeah, I mean, early on, if I, my people were, in August and September, when people were sort of assessing assessing the quality of the market and starting to sort of think about predictions and where are we going to be, which I never get into because I can't stand that. I hate that, even if it's just good old fashioned Italian. Parasfiga. I don't want to say anything. I don't want to say we're going to be this good or that good or whatever. But my feeling at the time, and I stand by this, was I feel that the squad is deeper, but its top end is lower. If that makes sense. I think it's a deeper squad. We definitely have more options, but I think when compared to the team last season, when you put our best 11 on the field, because of age, because of injuries, but also because we lost Milinkovic, and because Isaacson is new, Guendouzi is new, Castellanos is new. All these guys have to adapt and acclimate to the league. I do feel that, again, the depth, great. We got more depth than we had last year, but I think our top end, when you put our best 11 on the field this year and our best 11 on the field last year, last year's team performs better. Now, as you just said, Isaacson, I love the kid. I think he's amazing. I really have a lot of hope for him. Gila, who saw that guy coming out like this, right? So there's in spite of what's happening and the despair and the frustration that we all feel, for sure, I think there's some room for hope here. Like I said, Gila, Isaacson, Guendouzi. I had very little sense of what to expect from him. And I like him. I like him a lot. I think he's he's performed, he's getting better and better. And as he understands the league more and probably the language, he's getting better and better. So he's great. Castellanos, not crazy about him, wasn't crazy about him to start off with, but I admire his hard work and work ethic. And he does have great technical ability. So who knows? Maybe if after a year something will click, right? So there is room there for optimism. But you're right. Like we have to really think about who's going to replace Luis Alberto, who's going to replace obviously SMS is the big one, right? I mean, that's the other thing. We were talking earlier about our problems with the attack. And I remember like 4 or 5 games in saying, you really, like, we all knew Milinkovic's, Il Sergente was amazing. We knew that. But you realize how much we relied on him to get, even to get ourselves out of jams in the back. You could put a high ball up, he would hold it up, turn, pass, or play it back, and just, he always knew what to do, right? And even that little combination play, when we were going from zone 3 into zone 4, that little combination play, that transition, we win the ball and that transition quick into an attack last year that we had, we don't have that. Nobody does that, right? Because let's face it, Luis Alberto is a wonderful player, but he's not strong enough often to hold the ball up the way Milinkovic held the ball up. He's not tall enough to go and get it and bring it down, right? Things that I think looking back, like Milinkovic did, that you realize he papered over some of the, because people are always like, going on about Sarri ball, but it's always like, we really played a hybrid of Sarri ball with Milinkovic-Savic basically papering over the cracks between several different sort of styles.
Absolutely. And again, this is where you got to be fair in that, right? Like, you lose a player like that. Obviously, players take a dip. A manager is to blame for some of it. Like Sarri 27 games into this thing has to now understand, like, hey, you don't have Milinkovic anymore. What is the adjustment? What are we doing to figure it out? Like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Like, he has to figure it out. But like, again, we can all agree that just there's a need. Like, when we start looking at our next windows, it's going to be a lot different than the windows prior. It has to be impact players. Right? And we're not talking about your Mbappes, right? Like, we also have to. We know what type of club we have, but we did get a Ciro Immobile, right? It's that same status of player. We did get now Miroslav Klose was an older player, but right, like, we were able to still get a good 4 or 5 years out of Klose. Like, those are what we need, and we're going to have to do the same, because again, we have a core of players, but if we want to be able to do anything moving forward and taking advantage of that, now is the time to realize we need to move on. Right? Pedro's gone, right? Players that were impactful last year, it's just simply are aging out now. So I think we're just in a new phase, and there's going to be a lot of work to do. While I am hopeful, I think given our history of starting transfer windows late and feeling like we miss out on targets, it's going to be a really critical one this summer. So real quickly, going into, and we'll spend 2 minutes on this before we close out, just going to Tuesday and thinking about this matchup against Bayern Munich. What do you want to see, Mark, in terms of a lineup, and then what are your thoughts going into it? And I know you're not one to give predictions, but what are some of your maybe expectations, or obviously we're hoping for a result, but what does the level-headed mind of yours see?
Yeah, I mean, look, we're going into Bayern, which is a really difficult place to play, obviously, right? So I do think we're going to have to be a healthy dose of cagey, but also we're going to have to be a little audacious. I really do. I would like us to see a bit audacious. Like Sarri always used to say, he wants what was his phrase? He wants a team of faccia di cazzo, or faccia di cazze. He wants a team that has the courage to hold ball possession in the face of a Man City. I think he said palleggiare in faccia a Manchester City or something like that. I forgot the exact quote, but I think that's what we need. We're going to have to be a little bit audacious. I don't think we can totally play it cagey and hold Bayern Munich for 90 minutes of batten down the hatches, forte pace type football. I think that's a recipe for disaster. So we're gonna have to be smart. We're gonna have to be cagey. We're gonna have to choose our moments. But when those moments come, I think we have to show a little bit of a little bit of like I said, to be audacious, to go forward, to try to get at least one goal, and then hey, we're going to force Bayern to have to go all out to win the game, right? And then that's where maybe you have a chance to hit them back, and maybe then really settle.
And even without the goal, right? That's why I said a Pellegrini sends a statement, just letting them know that they need to be mindful of how they attack. Just putting it in their heads, because if they come out and we sit back and they don't have to think about defending, we're going to be in trouble. There's no way we can bunker down for 90 minutes. So what does your midfield look like? What do you want to see in that three?
I think, again, we talked about Luis Alberto, but he kind of have to have him on the field, because at any moment he's going to pull something out like he did last game. Right? Sort of quiet, and then out of the blue, Luis Alberto finds a way to score. So I think he's got to be there. I think Rovella is not going to be ready, so that's out of the question, and he's not game fit anyway. I think you put Vecino in for his grit and for his experience, honestly, for his furbizia, right? Because he's an Uruguayan international, I think one of the most capped, if I remember correctly. So he understands, right? What's going to happen here and what's going to need to happen on the field. And I think you have Guendouzi in there. I do, so I think you probably have Vecino as your number 6 and Guendouzi as your number 8, and then number 10 will be Luis Alberto, and you're gonna, that's what I see.
Yeah, I'm not far off. I think I could go either way with either starting Cataldi. Part of me wants to just start him. I feel like he's really good about being quicker, with his decision making. I love Rovella. I think Rovella should be the starting regista. I think he has I think he has the potential to be a starter for the Azzurri, but I think one of the things that Cataldi offers right now ahead of Rovella, which it's a moot point anyways, Rovella's not, fit, but just his decision, he's a little bit quicker when it comes to making some of those decisions in the attack and making those passes, which I would rather see to start the match, just again, to give that statement that, we're going to be here. But either way, I think is as long as you can, Vecino has to enter the match at some point. And so
I think so.
Obviously he is your Sergei Milinkovic light, like in many ways, just in terms of he is willing to get into a box and put himself in a position to try and find a goal. Obviously Guendouzi is a no-brainer. I mean, I think for this one, right, we already know it's going to be Ciro Immobile. There's a reason why he didn't start today. Zaccagni looks to be healthy, fit, came off early for this reason. There's no reason to think that Felipe Anderson isn't going to play. And I mean, he has to. Right? Like, I mean, this is the match that that you need a Felipe Anderson to just do everything.
Yeah, we're going to need the best version of Felipe Anderson that we know. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. 100%. We have to have the best. He's got to come back. He's got to go forward. He's going to have to dribble guys. He's going to have to make chances. He's going to have to do the whole thing. We need him to do that.
We need him to be his best. I mean, we're going to need a lot of players to be their best for any chance. But Felipe is probably the most critical because of when he is at his best. There's little doubt. Like we tend to perform at our best when it is Felipe Anderson is almost that key that unlocks us. And backline, I don't think there's right a center backs. It's an easy one. Right? It's going to be your Romagnoli and Gila, and assuming that Gila didn't pick up anything, he was able to play through early signs of a knock today. But your left back and right back, what do you want to see?
Well, I have a feeling. It's what we're going to see is Marusic and Hisai. I have a feeling, but it would be great to see Marusic and Pelli again. To be honest with you, but I like we said earlier. I don't know. I mean, it would definitely be an interesting statement for a number of different reasons if Sadi starts him. One, as we said, it sends a message to the other team that we're looking to go forward. We're not looking to just play sort of back and hold on for the tie. But I think it also sends a message to fans and maybe even to Pelli himself and Pellegrini himself and to the team. Maybe like it's an interesting statement, even like it gives us maybe, I don't want to read into it too much, but maybe it gives us a little bit of an insight into why has Pellegrini not played? Because there was some word that he might have been not totally match fit before this. There might have been some issues with his fitness. I heard a little bit of rumblings about that. So now if he plays him, is he basically saying, look, I thought you had a good game, fine, you made a mistake, get back out there and let's go forward? Or is it like, does he become the new Maximiliano?
Yeah,
and
right.
we don't see him again. He disappears into Formello, never to be seen again.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The only difference is we don't have an incredible backup behind him that can come in and take the reins. I think I'm going to play this under the assumption that Pellegrini is not going to get. I hope to be pleasantly surprised, but given, I'll assume he's not going to get the nod. I think I'd like to at least see your Marusic on the left and throw out Lazzari in there, just again for the sake of, make Bayern pay, make them be aware that there is a player out there that can provide a threat. Now, Lazzari we talk about being frustrated with Felipe Anderson. Lazzari may be the one player to one up him in terms of frustration because of what he can do and the excitement of his pace and how wonderful he is in a counter, only to then bottle it in the final third and provide just some of the worst service. But again, just in terms of a player that can at least make you think, and he is a lot better than he was in his first couple seasons defensively. So to me, it's not as much of a liability as it was in your first couple seasons.
No. Yeah. I'm actually surprised with how he's come. When they first decided they were going to convert him, when Sadi first came in, they were going to convert him into a fullback. I was like, I don't know about this, but you know what? He's done all right. Like he's done fairly well. He doesn't. As they say, the non sfigura. He doesn't, totally make a mess. He's pretty good, but yeah, like you said, his going forward, his crosses are honestly,
they're terrible. It's insane for, again, players that are out there training over and over and over again, and that's just not a piece that he can seem to grasp. But again, at this point, it's Bayern Munich. It is just the threat. It is get out there and just make them pay attention to you so that hopefully they lose a little steam in attack, because we just can't have a Bayern Munich that is continuing to knock on the door. But
no.
Yeah. So look, we're going to be hanging on tight. It is I saw some just asinine comments from some folks at CBS that said this was Lazio's biggest match in club history, I think was the quote, failing to realize that, little Lazio has done a few things in the past, one of which was beating the treble-winning Manchester United, wearing this very kit in 99-2000 season for the UEFA Super Cup. So, us taking down arguably the greatest club side in footballing history was I thought a pretty decent achievement. But people forget what happened a few years ago. So look, this is though unquestionably a big match and an important one, and can gloss over some frustrations at the very, very least in the moment, and give us something to cheer about. So look, we're here at Lazio Worlds. We're going to cover it immediately following the match, good, bad, indifferent, whatever ends up happening. We'll be here to either cheer about it or cry about it. So we are on all social media platforms, your Twitters, your TikToks with all the kids these days, Instagram. If you don't like looking at our faces, reasonably so. We also have this podcast available on all audio platforms, your Spotify's, your Apple Podcasts. So give us a subscription, give us those 5-star ratings. It does go a long way in helping this podcast grow. But above everything, sempre Forza Lazio.